Hello, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 5 of the ESG Experience, the podcast about all things ESG and beyond. Whether you're an ESG expert or just dipping your toes into the ESG universe, this podcast is for you. Together, we navigate the alphabet soup of ESG, share strategies, and discuss industry news and trends. I'm Helee Lev, CRO of ESG at Conservice.
And I'm Ryan Nelson, the CEO of ESG at Conservice.
Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by Katherine, though she goes by Kat, Kraft, Director of Product at Teren, Denver-based, to discuss the role of geospatial data in ESG reporting and climate resilience, as well as emerging trends and regulations around physical risk management. Kat, our guest today, is dedicated to solving big problems at the intersection of technology, economy, and environment. She specializes in geospatial solutions that build long-term financial value and resilience, and leverages 2 decades of experience in geospatial technology, natural resources, public policy, and market-based tools for environmental management. She has an MS in Natural Resources Policy and Economics from Colorado State University, where she also obtained a BS in Natural Resources. So, Kat, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Ryan and Helee.
All right, so I'm really excited about this conversation. Very cool stuff you're doing at Teren, and as head of products or director of products, I think it is. I'm sure you know very well what you're doing over there. I took a couple of paragraphs off your website. I think it'd be good. I'm kind of suggesting that we're doing this for the other people, but we might really be doing it so I can learn. But I'm going to pretend that I know.
And for the listeners.
It's for the listeners. I know all of these things, but no, I want to break down a little bit what Teren does and really just analyze this. So Denver-based Teren is a leading climate resilience analytics company. So maybe just introduce us to climate resilience. What does that even mean?
Yeah, so climate resilience is the act of fortifying, protecting, ensuring your assets or organization against the impacts of a changing climate.
Okay, so thank you. Yeah, we've all heard of being resilient and resiliency, especially over the last several years. So this is the idea of considering climate resiliency for your organization or for material assets. Got it. Okay. So then you harness the plethora of remotely sensed data from orbit and airborne platforms. So that's pretty cool. I imagine that your recruiting process over there is pretty easy when you do cool stuff that has orbit and airborne platforms. So what is remotely sensed data? I did a little research on this and I thought it was interesting, but I'd love to hear it.
Right. So great question, Ryan. So remotely sensed data, or remote sensing as a verb is the acquisition of information about an object or phenomenon without making physical contact with that object or phenomenon. So when it comes to collecting information, satellites do this every day, right? Circling the globe and obtaining information from a distance about weather and movement of people across the landscape or vegetation change, etc. And what remote sensing enables is the collection of data and information at scale. Right. It enables efficiencies and data science to really be deployed upon a much larger population of data observations than would ever be possible by direct contact or a physical site visit, a human site visit to a particular place. And with that combination of efficiencies and data science at scale, the insights that one can derive about trends or probabilities of climate change impact or whatnot are really there's magnitudes larger and than what would be possible by physical site visit, if not impossible through a physical site visit.
Yeah, we love thinking about scale, and obviously I think scale and global collaboration are going to be required to, solve some of the challenges we're working on today. And we love, in our business, we do focus on asset level, like buildings. We go into buildings, we analyze the performance of buildings, and then we love when we say, okay, well, that's that. But fortunately, we're working with the ownership group or the management group, so they have tons of buildings, so or hundreds or thousands. So okay, so now we're having even more scale because we're helping implement across thousands of buildings. But even that, now what you're doing even blows that scale away, where you're looking at things that you can see big global trends at huge scale. So I think that's very cool, and the only way that we're gonna make a serious effort at what we're trying to all accomplish here. So do you actually have things in orbit or airborne, or are those like just do you lease or borrow, or has Teren put satellites in orbit?
We fortunately we are not in the business of putting up objects into orbit. However, we do leverage the data that is produced by satellite imagery and observation. We however, do work with planes. We shoot lasers out of planes. LiDAR is what it's called.
Yeah.
And this LiDAR data is a good complement to imagery data, to photography, aerial photography from planes or from satellites, and being able to map the Earth's surface. So a lot of something we do at Teren that's unique and different in the climate risk and resilience space is a lot of climate risk analyses rely only on satellite data, which is comprehensive in coverage and continually updated, so it has a lot of benefits. However, it has limits in terms of the fidelity and resolution with which asset level risk and resilience hazards on the landscape can be detected and predicted. And so we fuse that more comprehensive and temporally resolute satellite data with LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. It's a laser-based mechanism deployed from an aircraft to map the topography of the Earth's surface and all the objects on that Earth's surface, right? So it's very high resolution, centimeter level resolution, right? So we're able to fuse those data sets together to provide deeper, more accurate insights into climate risk and resilience than would otherwise be provided by either technologies by themselves.
So Helee, I think you've had some experience with LiDAR. You were just telling me about the other day. You ever had any traffic tickets?
Yeah, but they were from live humans.
Yes.
I wasn't tricked by any sort of LiDAR or other technology.
Oh, but is LiDAR? I think LiDAR is one of the radar guns that they use. Does that sound right?
No, it's a radar gun.
Well, there was radar, and then they
They've
used
used
LiDAR, I thought, after that, because I remember my dad, he had one of those radar detectors,
Oh.
and because he was always trying to speed, and then when he would get caught, he's like, they were using LiDAR, so my thing didn't pick it up or whatever. I'm pretty sure it was LiDAR.
So where LiDAR and vehicles do intersect is in the autonomous driving space. So onboard LiDAR sensors, onboard LiDAR sensors within these autonomous vehicles or augmented driving vehicles, right, will help detect and map the road and all the objects around the vehicle while it's driving through space. So that's where LiDAR and vehicles do converge.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, just like what Teren does is really unique and interesting, but just a couple other applications I've heard of recently of, things not necessarily in orbit, but even just like the drone technology, like 2 applications, it's really changing the commercial real estate world from a standpoint of being able to analyze an area, like just from a couple of drone photos, the types of models they're able to put together when speccing, and putting together renderings for new locations for companies that are looking to move into a city. And then another company I heard about in Canada, they're using like similar, it's more than just a drone. It's like, technology like this, and their goal or their mission, it's an impact-based company, is to help like underprivileged students travel basically anywhere they want and have almost a complete experience. And it's virtual, but like from like you could come in like a Google Earth kind of thing, but you can come in and you could literally physically feel like you're touring the Grand Canyon without ever having actually toured the Grand Canyon. So I don't know. It seems that there's a lot happening, and it's definitely enabling a virtual world, which I have opinions on. But back to Teren. Okay, so I have a couple questions too. So I'm more interested, I guess, with my commercial background in the practical application of how people are using this to make decisions. So you're saying you're working with the asset owners or developers or an engineering firm to pinpoint risk. So say, just to break down an illustrative example for the listeners, say I own office buildings in Miami. How would I use this data? Like, would you give me a score? Would you give me like a report that advises me to buy or not to buy? Like, how would I actually leverage this technology in, say, that scenario?
So great question. And I do love the idea of that you were mentioning earlier of enabling more limited folks in more limited means to experience worlds in 3D that they wouldn't otherwise get to experience. It's a really interesting topic to chat on in a further moment.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, one would first want to go about assessing an asset owner or investor. One want to first go about assessing, okay, what potential exposures do I have in a particular area? How will climate risk manifest on the landscape in terms of floods or fires or heavy precipitation events that could induce subsidence? If you're talking about putting an asset in Florida or the Southeast somewhere, and where there was a lot of like karst and just soils that could quickly dissolve as a result of soil structures that could quickly dissolve as a result of that heavy precipitation events, right? This is how climate change manifests on the landscape as hazards. So you want to understand your broad exposure to those different climate risks, and at a perhaps a coarser scale, right? So you know where to focus more targeted analyses. All right, maybe that initial more coarser analysis immediately points you in the direction of like, okay, this is a safer region to place my assets or to purchase or insure assets, and this area is just going to be too much risk for me, too many overlapping hazards that could be material to my organization's performance, right? And so now that you have a less, you have an area identified that perhaps maybe offers you less exposure to those climate risks, you want to be able to identify where the opportunities are on that particular landscape, at that asset level, to fortify yourself to climate hazards that may present themselves, even though you made the best possible decision, right? So, for instance, I know that I want to buy some properties in the Southeast. There's a high exposure to heavy precipitation events that would occur as a result of tropical storms. And I'm going to look at that asset, that property in 3D, right, to determine where flooding might occur, where pooling and inundation of water might occur, where there may be opportunities to work with the landscape to reduce my exposure to those flooding hazards should a heavy precipitation event occur, right? In a cost-effective way, right? If I can place a berm, if I can build a berm with soils already on my property in this particular area, because I know if and when a flooding event occurs, that's going to be where my point of failure exists, then that's a really cost-effective, proactive measure to take in the face of climate change to build my resilience that I can monitor through time. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It does, yeah.
it's really cool. And something like that could all be analyzed like 100% remotely, for example, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Do you run into like privacy issues? Are you navigating that? Like, are you allowed to just like analyze my home from afar and do all that, or how does that work?
If you're paying me for the analysis, I can't resell that data to anyone else. But in the instance, and this happens in the insurance sector all the time, if the customer is an insurance carrier, and the insurance carrier pays for a nationwide assessment of flood exposure, for instance, that's not protected by any privacy laws.
Okay, so you could go fly a plane and shoot LiDAR across my neighborhood and learn about it?
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right,
But
good.
not a drone. Something you can't, like a drone. I don't think you can. Like
Right.
you own some airspace above you.
That's right.
Not all the way up to like a commercial airline.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
So they could see where your house floods. They can't like watch you brush your teeth or something.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's all you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Wait, I do brush my teeth. What are we saying?
No, I'm saying no one can watch you do that.
Oh, okay. Well,
You're good. You're safe.
It's fine. I brush my teeth normally, like a normal person.
I mean, the way the defensiveness is leading me to believe that you indeed do brush your teeth like a normal person.
Okay, so that's all very cool stuff. So this is how like cutting edge is this? Like, is there like what is missing and how energy and insurance assess physical risk today? I do feel like this is becoming more and more popular. Our customers are asking for this kind of analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So is this a changing market or something that Teren, I mean, just doing some research, the amount of data and the tools that you have to process the data, at least from the mouth of the CEO on the video, is quite compelling. So yeah, tell us about that.
So yeah, thanks for that question, Ryan. The world of climate risk analysis has been quickly evolving over the last couple of decades as improvements in modeling and remote sensing and high performance computing that can enable those global scale models have all improved, right? What's been missing from the industry in terms of solutions is, okay, well, now I know my risk. Well, now what, right? And what do I do next? What do I do if I do have assets spread across the Southeast and highly exposed to flooding risk, or I have assets spread across the Western U.S. and highly exposed to wildfire risk, right? What do I do if I can't just shed those assets, right? Which is really costly to do so, and quite frankly, nowhere in the world is completely safe from climate risk and climate hazards. So, the next step in the climate change kind of awareness and ESG process, right, is moving from risk to resilience. And that is the big leap that has been missing, and in terms of a technology solution, right, in the marketplace, and that's where Teren is stepping in to close that gap. And the resilience piece does require the marriage of like coarse resolution with really high resolution data, right?
Sure.
and at scale. So hence the remotely sensed data, hence the the fusion of these different data sources and the high performance computing needed to kind of underpin all of those processes.
So what we're saying is, we're not just saying, oh, that's too risky over there because too much rainfall or whatever. We're saying the entire planet is at some level of risk. There's some spectrum or maybe like score or something. There's some level of risk. But theoretically, what do we do to actually make it manageable or to be resilient? So you don't have to not be there. If you build this thing, then you've de-risked it or you've made it now a viable place to be. So that's, I get it. That's what we need to be doing across there's some place we're probably going to say it doesn't make sense to be here, 50 years from now. But we're not all going to move to the Great Lakes region and just live there with awesome fresh water and warmer temperatures over the years. So we got to figure out how to be in these other places and just be thoughtful and resilient about it.
I think an interesting example is an interesting conundrum, right? Is the renewable energy projects. So last summer, North American renewable energy projects that have been it has seen a really large uptick in number in development projects, right, because of the Inflation Reduction Act. Last summer, those North American renewable energy projects were hit by some of the most destructive extreme weather events in living memory. And as a result, insurers of those renewable energy projects were hit in massive ways. And it left exposed in ways that really affected bottom lines of for those carriers. And so for some renewable energy projects, there might not be insurance coverage going forward, right? They may be dropped. And with no insurance, there's no finance, there are no renewable energy projects, and there's no transition, speedy transition to an energy economy based on renewables. And that is a really interesting conundrum. So what renewable project developers have to now consider is, okay, well, I have this large scale investment perhaps in the middle of the desert that has great exposure to sunlight, but high exposure to flash floods that cause major stormwater problems and erode the integrity of the landscape upon which these solar arrays are installed, right? So I need to figure out a way to modify the landscape around my solar development site in order to obtain insurance, continue finance, and continue on with energy transition, right? So it affects all types of all sectors of the
economy. A domino effect, yeah. So you talk a lot about insurance companies being a main customer of yours or a main user of this data. What other use cases are there? Who other are big customers of yours that would use this data directly? The business use case for insurance is crystal clear. Like, how else are people using your data?
So when planning in that case I just gave you, the insurers are feeling the pain point from that renewable energy, from the exposures faced by the renewable energy sector. Some of our main clientele include renewable energy developers.
Okay.
So asset owners, site developers, infrastructure, major operators of large scale infrastructure projects and assets. The U.S. government is another client of ours. We work pretty closely with the USDA. and enable wildfire risk mapping and post-wildfire risk mapping for them at a large scale following significant wildfire events. So we have a pretty diverse set of customers.
So those, obviously the customers that just had that negative impact, they weren't customers, I'm sure, or that wouldn't have happened to them, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, maybe they will be now.
That's right.
But they must not have been. If I could switch gears just a touch, do you mind sharing an insight as director of product? We've got a big product team over here and lots of product managers and group product managers, and it's just something that's very interesting to me. Would you share any thoughts or nuggets about just product management or anything, how you're organized at your company, or just
Your
anything?
philosophy.
Your great philosophy in product management and leadership.
So I really love taking a science-based approach to product work. So everything is centered around the scientific method as much as possible. Always aware of the truths that I may hold are probably just assumptions that the market will prove wrong. And I anticipate a lot of my hypotheses to be nullified, and hope that I'm running a scientific process that enables the quick nullification or a validation of hypotheses. That's perhaps one of my my favorite parts about product management and the product world, is that it's curiosity and scientific method driven.
Yeah, I've been reading a fair amount about that lately, actually, like philosophically, like the idea of ensuring that knowing that you're following a scientific approach is when you are somewhat objectively, at least arm's length enough away that you almost want your theory to be nullified or something to that effect. It's very interesting. If you start defending it unscientifically, then that's not really the behavior
The
you're
world
supposed
is
to be
flat.
doing.
It is. It's flat.
Did you know Denver is the world headquarters of the Flat Earthers
Is it
Association?
Really?
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. Did you watch the documentary on Netflix?
I didn't. But I've been thinking about how we might apply some of our remotely sensed data analyses to nullify that hypothesis.
If you watch the documentary, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but they get in there. They talk to the founder of it and everything. So I bet it'll inspire you to try and get a hold of the founder and walk through. He's good though at maintaining the bubble and nullifying other things. Like, well, have you ever actually seen a plane fly around the world? No. Have you seen one fly around the world? Like, you haven't watched it fly all the way around the world. So how do you know? It's pretty special. No, thank you for sharing that insight, and it's very cool stuff that you're doing over there. This Kat brings us to a scientifically based game that we have to play. So if you don't mind, it's pretty easy. It's a 50-50 chance, and we call it beans or beer. And you just need to tell me if this word I tell you, if it's a beer or if it's a coffee.
All right.
That's all I got to do is guess beer or coffee.
All
Is called.
Or both. Wasn't there a both option? Or just can't not get the both option?
It changes week to week.
Every week it changes.
This is
Every
one
option.
or the other.
Right.
Pardon me?
And it depends option.
No, this is a binary situation. Unlike
Nullified
most
or
of the
validated.
nuanced world, this is a binary information or situation here. Spacecraft.
Ooh, beer.
It is beer. Well done. It is a Sam Adams beer that the hops actually orbited they did some orbiting. For some reason, they put them on a spaceship and they flew them around the planet a couple times, and then they used those
So you could
hops
sell more beer.
for their beer. Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a marketing bit, and then they named the beer Spacecraft. But we get the
So,
obvious.
children are starving.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool. But we get the connection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The orbiting,
The
of
orbiting
hops,
and
the
this,
orbiting
yeah,
of
yeah. How we get
Teren.
LiDAR, the whole.
Did
the
you
whole
think of
thing.
that yourself?
I did, yeah. I come up with
Brilliant
these.
work.
I come up with these.
That's pretty-
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for playing and thank you for getting it right. You're one of few, even though it's 50-50, which being scientific, you might challenge, there maybe is something wrong with my game because almost everyone gets it wrong, but it's 50-50. So there's something to be checked for. Well, Kat, thank you very much. It was very cool to learn about Teren and the things that you're doing and the scale that you and the team is applying there. So that's really, really good. And we appreciate the efforts on climate resiliency. And yeah, we should talk more about how we can connect.
Fabulous.
Yep.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Ryan and Helee.
Thank you.
Likewise. This has been another episode of the ESG Experience podcast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed your time with us, please subscribe on your favorite podcast directory. There's a new episode every month. We appreciate our tens of hundreds of thousands of loyal subscribers for continuing to, it just flipped from 10,000 to hundreds of
Oh, did it? Yeah, okay.
As we were sitting here.
That's not scientific.
Yeah, no. But we do appreciate those of you who do continue to support our podcast. And if you want to continue the conversation between episodes, follow us on your favorite social media channel at #ESG Experience. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kat.